All right, I am going to make this very just easygoing. I want it to be interactive, so I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, talk a little bit about how they got into the industry, and then the first thing to get started is one of the biggest challenges that they faced in this industry and how they overcame it. Our actor is running a little bit late, I'm sorry, so once he comes in here, he'll get thrown into that mix too. But I definitely want you all to ask questions, so please have questions. If not, then I will be doing all the talking, and I do all the talking all the time anyway, and I don't want to do that. It's about them, not me. So take it away, Sylvia.
Oh gosh, I gotta start.
Oh, and we do have a microphone that I think that they need for you to use in order for the recording.
Hear my big old Irish accent. Is it on? Testing. Hi, I'm Sylvia Hutson. I own Hutson Talent Agency. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here. Oh gosh, what do I say? I started my business 9 years ago now, I guess. I was in wardrobe for TV and film and got tired of being on the road and working 50 million hours and swapped it for a job that I work 100 million hours, so it's no change. I like being my own boss. I enjoy that part of it. Challenge, every day is a challenge. There's always something new. I was heading out the door, for example, last night to go to rehearsal. I'm doing a stage production, and it's like I have all the time in the world. I'm like, yeah, of course, and then I'm like, why did I say yes? But anyway, I digress. And I got a call from a casting director and for a Drop Dead Diva show that's on TV. And he's like, there's an actor that we need. He's going to have to leave either tonight or tomorrow morning. We need to get on the phone and we need to start deal memos and we need to start action right now. Sorry for calling you on your cell phone, but... So it was a mad flurry, having to wait for all the different studio levels for approval, then the deal memo and everything. So needless to say, I didn't make it to rehearsal. But so every day is a challenge. There's always something new. When clients email me or call, they want the actors yesterday. Or they'll say, oh, we have a shoot this afternoon. Can you get me 21 people? And you're like, okay, sure, why not? So it is. But I absolutely love what I do. I really do. There's nothing more exciting for me as an agent to call an actor and say, hey, you booked the gig. I mean, that is just the biggest enjoyment. I think I get more excited than them. In fact, some of them go like, you're really excited. And I'm like, well, yeah, For me personally, it honestly is not about the money in the industry, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're an agent, you're rolling in it. No, we're really not. You don't get paid, we don't get paid. It's like the actor, starving agent, starving actor, same things. But it really is, for me personally, it is the enjoyment. Coming from the acting end of it, it has helped me, I think, as an agent, to be able to treat the actors the way that I want to be treated. And I call them all my babies. It's real informal, but they are my babies, and I want to take care of them. And we don't have enough laws out there to protect them, so hopefully I'm going to learn something today and pick brains also. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm Lou Isakoff, and I am in it for the money. No, I'm a lawyer. I have to be. Are most of you guys law students? Are all of you law students? Okay. Well, I kind of backed into the entertainment industry. Right now, I'm general counsel for Regent, so I do entertainment law kind of as a backdrop. I just had an inquiry today that the comm school is doing something in the theater. They wanted to use some music. What rights do they need to clear? They possibly wanted to show some film clips. We've done a lot of productions at the university, student things. I get questions about that. But I started out not even thinking about entertainment law. I was working for a firm. I saw in Ohio, I saw an ad for the Christian Broadcasting Network and didn't really say much about the job other than, if you're let to serve, apply. So I sent off. I didn't even know really who Pat Robertson was, but got hired and just started doing general things there, and then gradually moved over to working for the Family Channel. I was general counsel of the Family Channel from '89 through the period where we acquired MTM Productions, which had a huge film library and studios in the UK. We launched channels in the UK and Latin America. Was involved taking the company public, and then involved in its ultimate sale in 97 and 98 to Fox, and then came back to CBN and Regent. So I found it fascinating. I guess one of the questions is, how do you prepare for a career as an entertainment lawyer? And it's not so much the courses you take, because it involves a whole lot of different areas. So much of the industry now is not run by the artists, the creative types. It's run by the business people. So you need a strong business background. You need to know how to negotiate a contract. Mark and I were talking before the session began about labor unions. Well, you hear about Screen Actors Guild, Writers Guild, SAG-AFTRA, that kind of thing. All those really are trade unions. They're no different than the Teamsters or United Mine Workers in that. You hear that the Writers Guild went out on strike and your favorite show is not going to have new episodes. Well, that's really the same as a transit workers strike in a city that shuts down the buses. So having a broad perspective, knowing business law, labor law, knowing some accounting and that kind of thing, knowing international law, because so much of production is international, just having a really broad perspective is probably the best training you can have for that. And then you kind of learn as you go. When I came to CBN, I didn't know anything about entertainment law, and then within a few years I was general counsel of a cable network with 50 million homes, and you had to figure out to learn quickly. And you did deal with agents and negotiated contracts with talent, or license deals to acquire programming for the network and that kind of thing. So it's really just knowing contract principles and knowing what to look for and asking a lot of questions and learning as you go. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, it's on.
Does this work? Okay. My name is Mark Paladini, and I started out as an actor in New York, and I studied with Uta Hagen, and basically I joined all three of the actors' unions, and then I fell into casting in New York, and I worked in casting for 2 years, and I decided I wanted to work more in film and television, so I moved to Los Angeles. And for the first year in Los Angeles, I was working temp and trying to get work in a casting office, and every casting office said, well, have you done contracts? And I was like, well, no, but I can do it. And they're like, oh, you haven't done contracts. And it's like, the contracts that casting directors do are like fill in the blanks. It's like really very simple stuff that you have to do. Anything that's run of the movie is usually done by business affairs. And so, I still look back at that and go, why were they so obsessed with that? Because it really wasn't that complex. But there are things I had to learn. I started out at the bottom of the barrel in Los Angeles. I was the casting assistant on Divorce Court. You don't get any lower than that. But I just worked my way up. And my first casting director job was actually through the Family Channel. I was the West Coast casting director for Big Brother Jake. And the reason I got that was the first year, I had some friends who were writing on it, and they would contact me and go, hey, we're going into New York, and we're looking for this part. And I'd say, okay, look for this person and that person. And they ended up like, every time they did that, they'd say, wow, we really like those people. And sometimes they'd go, hey, we hired that person. So basically, I just helped them out. And then the next year, they decided to hire a New York casting director and a West Coast casting director. And it ended up that I got my first casting director job because I was helping out friends. And it's just a reminder that you don't have a chip on your shoulder when someone comes up to you and asks you to help them out. It's like, it's amazing what helping out someone can do for you. And I worked my way up in Los Angeles because I didn't look at my watch at the end of the day and say, I gotta go. I had a brain in my head, and I used it, and I had a good attitude. And I'm just whatever direction you go, I feel as though if you use those principles, and of course the brain in your head is out of my control, but that's in the Lord's hands. but assuming that you're here and you're educated and you're being trained, then it will take you far. And some of the projects I've done are The Mask. I worked for New Line Cinema a lot, Mortal Kombat, Disney's Spy Hard, and TV shows like the old Beverly Hills 90210, and which didn't seem old at the time. And like a science fiction series called Babylon 5, a lot of pilots and series regulars. I worked over at Spelling. I was still working under contract for different, each show, but they had the tendency to give us pilots every year, and so I had a lot of experience working with lawyers. In fact, the most influential lawyer was a guy named Neil Strum, who you know, who was at MTM. And basically, he taught me a lot about contracts and just dealing with series regulars, getting quotes. And that's all of that is a changing field. Anyway, I think, did I answer the question?
The challenging part.
Oh, what's challenging?
Biggest challenge that you've had to face, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest challenge I ever faced is, honestly, at a certain point, there was runaway production. And there was just an absence of production in Los Angeles to cover all of the casting directors. And I started finding ways to introduce myself to foreign producers, like Canadian producers, people who did Canadian UK productions. And it really was, and one of the reasons why I'm here is that I discovered that in about 3 years, I only did one project that I had to be in Los Angeles, and everything else I did was shot in Ireland or Canada or Malta, and I was like, I can do this anywhere. I do most of my work on the phone and on computer now. And so the biggest challenge was sort of wrapping my head around this different way of casting, which was not the day-to-day directing the actor in the scene and just seeing people every day, but doing more work over the phone and just research of stars. A lot of it is star work. And you just have to adapt.
Dealing with the international aspect and the contractual side of it, because I know that, of course, each country is different. How have you all been able to deal with any of the differences? Have there been any deals that you just said, absolutely not, because I just cannot agree to this because it's against X, Y, and Z? Or has it been pretty easy along the way and everybody's been able to come to a meeting of the minds, so to speak?
I can take a stab at that. There have been a couple times where we've had to walk away from things. It's pretty rare. One issue is, a lot of countries have a problem with corruption. And, to get your program on television, you have to pay a bribe, and that violates federal law, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, so you can't do it. You have to say no, and then your show doesn't get aired there. Some of it, is language issues. There's a few places. I did a lot of work in Asia and East Europe where you had to have translators, and you never know if the agreement's being translated correctly. we've had agreements that are Chinese, then English, Chinese, then English, Chinese, then English, and then the bottom clause says, in the event of conflict between the two languages, the Chinese governs. So you wonder why even do the English, but that's an issue. But even dealing with English, you run into troubles. We were negotiating, I mentioned we acquired MTM with the British company that owned it, and we were in this conference room in the basement of a building, negotiating with the chairman of the British company, and we presented an idea. He said, well, we'll table that. We presented another idea. He said, we'll table that. We presented another idea. He said, we'll table that. And we were saying, well, look, we came all this way. Are we going to make any progress? And he basically said, well, what do you mean? In the UK, to table something means you put it on the table for discussion. You present it to the board. In the U.S., it means let's lay it aside and consider it labor. So, two countries separated by a common language. He thought we were making great progress. He's going to present it to his board, and we were saying, well, you keep tabling things, we're not getting anywhere. So, you do run into challenges, but particularly in the entertainment business, English is kind of the main language of business. So we really are at an advantage in dealing with other countries. So you're late. You get your introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Derek Leonidoff. I'm an adjunct professor here at the university, and I'm a local actor. And sorry for the delay. Happy to be here, though. Yeah, right. If I was on actor's time, I'd be another 10 minutes, I guess, or so. But happy to be here.
Just to catch you up to speed,
Sure.
just to have everybody introduce themselves,
Okay.
and then how they got into the business, and then what was the biggest challenge that you had to face, and how did you overcome it?
Ooh. Have you gone yet? We've all gone. Oh, okay. All right, well, so when I was in high school, actually, I got my first professional gig. I was working dinner theater here locally. There was I grew up here in this area. I actually used to live in Los Angeles. I spent some time in New York, but came back home here for family. Anyway, when I was growing up here, there used to be a dinner theater called Tidewater Dinner Theater. And I got my first gig doing that, Brighton Beach Memoirs. And from there, I had an agent come to the show, and she saw me in the show. And she said, hey, listen, I think there's potential here. Let me send you out on some auditions. And so she, quote unquote, signed me. And shortly thereafter, I was 18, or I guess it was 19 years old when I booked my first SAG role, Screen Actors Guild film, which was First Kid with Sinbad. You're welcome. I was the donut kid. But that's where I got Taft-Hartley'd into the union, and which I knew nothing about. How I wish I had an entertainment lawyer to help me at that stage. But luckily enough, I had a few actors that were there that were very kind to me and saw that I was a little green and said, hey, let me show you a few things. They made sure all my paperwork was good. And that's how I got into the industry. And almost 20 years now, I've been working professionally, doing theater, film, and television. And probably the biggest challenge I've had to overcome, when I first moved to Los Angeles, one of the hardest things to do when you move to any new city, but particularly LA, is find representation, find an agent. And when I moved to LA, I started training at some of the various film and theater comedy schools, started going to the Groundlings, Second City, Improv Olympics. Some of these schools may or may not be familiar to you. But as I was there, I was also part of a group called the Hollywood Connection. And it was a group of, it was also known as the Actors Network. It was a group of actors, and for $50, you would come and just rehearse monologues and auditions in front of other actors, and they would give you feedback, and they'd get up and you'd give them feedback. And about once a week, they'd have various agents, managers, directors, casting directors come and speak to the actors. So I would go to every one of these seminars, and in particular, when the agents or managers would come, I would, of course, here I am, desperate for representation.
as everybody was in the room. You're not allowed to solicit in the room, but afterwards you could send postcards and what have you. So I would do that, and I'd send out my headshot and resume to various agents, but if I was lucky, I got a thanks but no thanks. Most of the time I didn't hear anything at all. However, while I was there at the Actors Network, I saw one lady get up. Her name was Kathy Carter. And interestingly enough, she was a lawyer, but she was also a manager. She decided, to kind of leave entertainment law to go into managing actors. Decided that's where she really wanted to spend her time. And she was this kind of fiery Texan. And I, as a believer, I'd been praying about kind of who I wanted to represent me. And I just knew she was the one. So afterwards, I spent the better part of probably a month trying to get her to represent me. And it's kind of a funny story. Do I have a second? Okay, so right afterwards, again, knowing we can't solicit, but I ask her a question. Afterwards, I shake her hand and say thank you very much. The next morning, immediately, I go to her office, I drop off a headshot and resume and a reel. Say, please just take a look at my work. So that afternoon, I got an email back saying, thank you for submitting. So many people did from Actors Network. We're grateful for your submission, but we're not accepting new clients at the moment. So I said, okay. I had put together basically like a 15-point plan about how I was going to get her to at least just look at my reel. And so I said, okay, no problem, so check. So the next day, I sent her a huge bouquet of flowers with my headshot sticking out of it and my reel, and I said, hey, please just watch my reel. So I got a phone call from her assistant saying, oh, Kathy, love the flowers. That was so generous of you. Really, we're not looking for clients right now. So thank you very much, but no thanks. I'm like, okay, no problem. Well, I want to say if the seminar was on a Wednesday, Thursday I sent my headshot, Friday I sent the flowers, that Sunday was Easter Sunday. So I put together a giant Easter basket full of candy, but also I put in there dog toys, because in the seminar she talked about her dog and how important her dog Romeo was to her. So I put in dog toys for Romeo, and along with my headshot and my reel. And I said, please just watch my reel, right? So I dropped that off Sunday morning. Now, I drop it off, and then I go to work. And at the time, I was working retail on Rodeo Drive, just a few days a week to help pay the bills. And so I'm at work, and I get a phone call, and it's her assistant, and he goes, please hold for Kathy Carter. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm on the phone. I'm like, hey, can I step outside for a second? They're like, yeah, go. So I step outside. And she gets on the phone, she goes, you're funny. I said, was it too much? And she goes, no, I watched your reel, you're funny. She said, can you be here by 6? I said, hey, can I get off work early? They're like, yeah, go for it. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Went over there. She said, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna sign you, but we're gonna send you out on some auditions and see how things go. And then we'll go from there. And I was able to book a few callbacks that kind of kept me in her sights. And then I want to say about 6 months after that, I booked my first national commercial with her, and after that, she signed me. And even after moving back to Virginia, she still represents me in Los Angeles, and when stuff comes across her desk, when it's appropriate for me, she'll call me, and I'll put myself on tape, and I give her a cut of everything I make, so there you go. So that was probably my biggest challenge, but I was able to overcome it. Woo!
I just want to say, in New York and in Chicago, if you don't sign with an agent, it's called freelancing. And in Los Angeles, if you're not signed with an agent, it's called being hip-pocketed.
So I'm going to open it up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions? I know you have some questions. All right, it's all me again.
Come on.
Go for it. All right, so this is a dual question for the agent and in this field do not have the money for both an agent and an attorney. What advice can you give them to protect themselves from being taken advantage of until they can possibly afford both, and should they have both?
Oh, yes.
They shouldn't pay anything for an agent. That is one of the things that is a personal irk to me. I get phone calls all the time. How much is it to be part of the agency? Nothing. The only time money should ever exchange hands between an agent and an actor is when the agent books the actor on that job and the agent gets commission, and commission only. And that's it. You should never, ever, ever pay. And it's a constant, and that is a personal peeve of mine, because they're out there where you have to use our photographer to get our headshots, or you have to take our classes in order for us to represent you. Absolutely not. An agent is an agent, and an agent only, to represent you and to work for you, and vice versa. You know, and you have to be proactive in your career, but never, ever, ever should you pay.
Okay. Well, lawyers in the entertainment industry are different than real lawyers. They are part agent too. You know, I was different because I worked for the Family Channel. I had one employer, but a lawyer who works in his own firm or her firm, or works on their own, sometimes a lot of times they'll represent the production company, sometimes they'll represent talent. There's a lot of crossover. Conflict of interest is a little bit different out in Hollywood, but a lot of lawyers in the entertainment business will work for a percentage as well. So, you know, if they're representing an actor, they'll get a percentage of the salary. If they're representing a deal, they'll get a percentage of the production budget and that kind of thing. But for the individual who wants to break into Hollywood, you know, having a lawyer is great, but really having the agent, I think, is more important, because they're the ones that have the best contacts to get you that small job. And, you know, you start maybe making a commercial, work up the ladder, but it's a very tough business. I mean, what percentage of the actors in Hollywood are working on Rodeo Drive, or, you know, delivering pizza, or, you know, whatever? Yeah, a waiter, you know. And a lot of times they're discovered, or sometimes they're discovered doing that, but you know, it's a tough business to break into. So, you know, that's probably the biggest challenge, is getting somebody to watch you. And, you know, you did it a very creative way, and great that you did.
Lucky. I just want to say that for actors, they usually don't need an entertainment attorney until they're doing test option deals for series regulars, because that's where they go into long form contracts. Every now and then, maybe a run of the film long form contract once they sort of like move up the food chain a little bit. But by and large, actors are protected by the union, and the union contract is like this thick, and it's like all these things are already agreed to. So the production company has to follow all those things. And then there are a few like little things that are added into the template, like how much you're paid on a weekly basis, you know, above the scale, right? And what your billing is, and any additional things. And really an agent can negotiate all of that. And it's only when you're dealing with a long form sort of test option deal for series regulars, or like a major role in a film, that you really need to get into that.
I'm sorry, Mark. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that all the work I've done has really only needed, it's been the SAG contract plus 10%. Occasionally, my manager has been able to get me plus 15% to cover her expense. But I will say that I did a faith-based film, Letters to God. It was produced by Possibility Pictures. And after that, they requested me to go on tour to promote the film. And I had no idea. I was like, what is that? What do I charge for that? How much do I get paid for that? And so, because my manager was also an attorney, that really helped in terms of her, you know, shaking that down, and what did the contract look like? What were my hours per diem? You know, that sort of stuff, travel expenses, what have you. So that was really, really helpful to me. Had I not had an attorney, I don't know if I would have sought one out, or had I trusted my agent and the production company to investigate that on my behalf and go from there. But it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, thank you that she's an attorney and that she can handle this sort of thing for me. So.
Yeah, I've noticed just then some of the production companies are now, they just deal with the deal memo. That is it. They just do the deal memos. But a lot of them, you have to fight to get it before, as the agent, to get it before the actor actually goes and does the shoot. I mean, sometimes it is like pulling teeth, because they're like, well, they'll sign it when they get there, and I'm like, no, we take a look at it before they go there. So that can be a challenge. Sometimes the production companies don't want to release it beforehand, and it's like, no, I got to see it before.
The one of the reasons why people hold back sending out deal memos is because sometimes production sort of like goes behind, and then they want to talk the agent into talking the actor into pushing their start date. And if you send a deal memo out with a date on it, then they're not. Then they're bound for that date. They can still say, don't worry about it, you can change my start date. But usually once a deal memo goes out with a date on it, people make you stick to it. And so producers have the tendency to just do oral deals, which are binding, by the way. An oral deal is binding, with SAG. And so if I make a deal, I'm bound by that. I have to ask someone to push the date, and they have to say yes. Otherwise, that date is what it is, unless it's like an on or about, which is on a weekly and not a daily. And an on or about means you can either call them for that day or the next day.
Just to elaborate, yes, an oral deal is binding, but both parties have to come to the same conclusion when it's challenged later that this is what the agreement was. And one of the problems is, of course, not everybody agrees when it falls apart. But Hollywood is different than the real world. As lawyers, you're told, button it up, get the contract signed before people start to perform services. Hollywood's different. Give you an example. When we bought MTM, they were in production of a show called Evening Shade. Burt Reynolds was in it. It was on CBS, big deal back then, one of the higher rated shows. They were in their third season of production. It had already aired for 3 seasons. It was being produced at the CBS studios by MTM, and there was no contract signed yet. We did the show for another year or 2, and we still didn't get a contract signed. Another example, when we took over MTM, one of the executives raised questions about their contract. We asked to see the written contract. It never was signed. And there was a big difference of opinion as to what this person's rights were and that kind of thing. And he said, but they promised, and there was nobody left to say, well, yes, we agreed, or no, we didn't agree. So it was something we had to work out. But it is different in the entertainment industry. And yes, if it's a guild production and AFTRA, which is more for television, or SAG is involved, there is a standard agreement that is a couple 100 pages long. But even there, we were doing productions for cable television, and there were, different variations of that. How much do you pay up front? How much do you pay as residuals? There were different choices to make. So it was good to get at least a deal memo with the talent.
Without elaborating too much, but what are some of the shadiest things that you've had to encounter and overcome?
Can I please answer that?
Shadiest.
Oh, yeah.
I never done
Here.
this before.
The shadiest things, and they go on all the time in this industry, constant, is you get the, hi, do you want your child on Disney? Your child's going to be the next superstar. We're coming to the Hilton Hotel this weekend. Doesn't cost anything up front. Come ahead. $4,000 later, these families are without, because the kids hear it on the radio. They're like, oh, Mommy, I want to be on Disney. They go to these seminars at this, the Hilton Hotel by this, one of the companies was called, and I'll say their name, T-H-E, with a on it. And they were, of course, told everybody it didn't cost anything, but they needed, their photographer was there. We'll take a couple of test pictures. Test pictures, $400 later. Then we want you to come to Florida because we're going to be performing in front of agents, and your child's been picked by walking down the runway. Your child's a star. They'll on their dime, they'll go to Florida with the child, and this happens. Adults fall for this too, and $5,000 later, they're out of pocket and they never hear from them again. It is a constant. There is no laws out there like that to protect the actor as with these companies that come in. And it is it's like at least once a month there's somebody flies into town and do this. And some people are very receptive. They'll call me and they'll say, hey, Sylvia, this is coming in. Have you heard of this? I'll do my little research thing. I love Google. Google is my best friend. And I'll let them know, hey, no, this is my advice. Some people take it, some people don't, and they'll come back later and tell me how much money they spent. There's a school that took off that used to be in the area and took off with all the people's money. And they were, there was two of the children that I had went. I'll tell my story. Is that okay? Do I have time? I'm sorry, I can ramble. I'm so sorry. This particular school, I had a friend of mine who was one of the teachers, and he had asked me to come out and see his students. And I said, sure, I'll come out and see your students. So I went, saw the students, and the lady who was in charge came to me and she said, we're bringing in new faces today. Would you mind coming and speaking to them about an agent and the importance of classes? I'm like, well, I'll speak about the agent part, and I'll speak about classes because there's lots of schools to choose from. So I did that, and then she came to me and she said, would you mind auditioning the people? We'll bring a camera in. Would you mind, having them audition for you? And I'm like, sure, I'm here, might as well. Sylvia, don't say no. That's not in my vocabulary. So I did that. Well, there was a couple of people. Everybody was very green. There was a couple of people in there that had, sometimes you just see somebody has that little, That's technical. That's my technical term for But, so I asked the young lady that they had sent in with the camera to tape them. I said, do you mind rewinding that? I'd like to see what they did. She said, oh, we don't put tape in the camera. We just do that so that they'll spend the money to come and take our classes. I'm like, really? Well, guess what? Goodbye. So I went out and I saw the couple of people and I said, by the way, don't sign up for the classes, and walked out the door. And then this company took off with all the actors' money who had spent for their classes. So there's a lot of shady. And I really do. There's nothing to protect. If you're not part of a union, if you're, or just trying to get into it, and of course, the kids especially have stars in their eyes. There's absolutely nothing out there to protect the actor, and it burns me up big time because these companies need to be under some type of law that, if you really are what you say you are, you're not going to charge these actors. I know everybody wants to make a buck, but you don't do it at the expense of others. So, sorry. My soapbox. Okay.
You wanted the most unethical thing I saw somebody else did. Not that I did. No, but seriously, one of the biggest things we saw was net profit definitions. And you always think it's great. Yeah, Mark's laughing. I get a low salary, but I get to share in the profits. And you would think net profits, it's real easy. There's revenue and there's expenses, and what's left is your profit. But Hollywood definitions, there's been lawsuits about it. And we had two incidents. The first one involved the production of Zorro. We were doing a weekly series of Zorro. And it had been in like second or third year of production. It was an international co-production with a French partner, an American partner, us, and a Canadian partner. And we kept getting statements, and the more the show was distributed, the more it went into the hole because of the definition of net profits. They were getting a lot of revenue, but they were getting distribution fees, distribution expenses, overhead, this, that, and the other thing. And the more they made money, the more it was in the negative. We had another one, we were doing a show called Kids Inc. With MGM, and it was another net profit definition. We actually canceled the show because the definition was so bad, because it said not only all the expenses, but everybody else's profit participation came out before us. And we said, well, what are their participations? They wouldn't, I don't even think they even told us what it was. So the more, again, that it would be produced and distributed, and we were paying, maybe a third or half of the budget, the further in the hole it got. So that's a big area. That's a bad area for actors too, that, work for scale or, whatever, and you'll get a share of the net profits and you never see it. So, if you're doing a contract and you're representing the person, you want to get, a percentage of gross or percentage of some kind of adjusted gross, but clear definitions. The net profit definition was longer than the contract.
Just to piggyback on what Lou was saying, when we did The Mask, Peter Regent agreed to do it for a much lower rate than you normally made, but we negotiated box office bumps, which is if the movie makes this much domestic, he'll make another $100,000, and if it makes this much domestic, he'll make another $100,000. He made like $600,000 on The Mask. When we were making the movie, Jim Carrey wasn't a huge name. In fact, a lot of agents didn't even know who he was. And I would have to say he's Fire Marshal Bill, and they'd go, "Oh yeah, he's funny on TV." But anyway, that's another way that you can look at Variety, see what's reported in Variety, and get your bump based upon that. Now, what was the question? Shady? Something shady? Yeah. There's. Oh, I know. How about this? Just when you think someone is being shady, you still have to do your job. So I'm casting The Mask, and Chuck Russell, the director, says, I want to meet every model in town, and I don't care if they have little or no acting experience all for this role. And I'm thinking, great, he just wants every model to know he's directing this movie, and then he has dates for the next whatever. And this is my head, right? Just going, because New Line is never going to approve someone with no experience to play this lead, which was so dialogue rich. And it ended up that Cameron Diaz got her very first job. I was the very first person to ever audition her. She had never taken an acting class. She was just a model, and not a top famous model. She was just a model. And so I was wrong. Sometimes you think someone is being shady, and you still have to do your job as long as it's doing your job, which was auditioning these people.
I have a question in regards to, I'm sorry, I came a little late, I'm sorry about that, but in regards to being an entertainment lawyer, working actually with a production company or with, let's say, Disney or something like that, how are the hours like? I don't know if you guys know or have any experience or come into contact with anyone like that, but how are the hours like, and are they treated better than interns if they're like an entry-level attorney? Do you have any idea?
Well, it really depends on where you work and what you're doing. It ebbs and flows. And it's the same way with law firms. You can work with a New York or Washington law firm and work 80 hours a week, and if you have a half a day on Sunday, you're doing well. Or you can work in another firm and have more normal hours. If we were doing a production and having to get things done, you'd work a lot of hours. But working for the university, I still do at various times. If you're doing international, it's a challenge. I mentioned we bought the British company. We were also doing a production in Australia, so the sun never set on our empire, so to speak. But before you got up in the morning, you'd have a call from the UK because they're 5 hours later than you, and then you get home at night and you get calls from Australia because they're 17 hours ahead of you or whatever it was. So it varies, but I think with any job, you want quality of life, of course, but when you're first starting out, you've got to spend the time, you've got to work the hours, and hope that it pays off. You graduate from law school and you pass the bar and you get a degree and you can go into any court in the state, but you really don't know much. I've been there, so I can say it. And it takes time to learn, and you got to spend the time. So it varies, but when you go for a job interview, don't ask them the hours, because then they'll say, she doesn't really want to work. Just whatever it takes, get the experience, and then if it's not what you want, move on to something that's more your taste after you have some credentials, some experience, and something to offer the next employer.
I just want to follow up on that. A producer once said, what I did was I realized that my boss wanted to leave early. So I tried to learn everything that they did, and I did their job for them. So at a certain point, they got moved up, and I was the person who took over their job. So it's really, when you're starting, you want to learn as much as you can and get as much experience, and always want to do the work of the people above you, so that they see, oh wow, they can take care of all this stuff.
Go ahead.
How does entertainment law relate to people who are like directors?
Well, I'm thinking about that one. Law permeates everything we do in society. So, some things on a production side are governed by contract. Some are governed by law. There's child labor laws. So if you're a director and you have a 8-year-old in a film, someone, the producer, you has to make sure that the hours are right, that there's a tutor available so that they get the class experience. I think law is a good background for anything. I mean, the director is going to be more creative than the lawyers, but there's safety issues. You hear about people being killed on a set because a stunt went bad. You need to be attentive to those kinds of things. The director isn't going to be a lawyer, and you don't typically have a lawyer on the set, but the director has to think about legal issues too.
There's probably also contract stuff, I suspect, not unlike an actor. This is just a guess on my part, but I mean, surely there's contract negotiation as well, where an attorney would, especially on a larger production, you start talking about box office bumps and what have you, where the director gets, additional money depending on how the film does, in addition to his, rate with the DGA, which is a standard rate. It's a contract, not unlike the SAG contract. So that would be my guess. I don't know have you worked with any directors that?
Well, I think also a lot of times young independent directors become writer, producer, directors, and they just need to understand all the rights issues, because you're also making creative decisions, but you can't make a creative decision, of having a picture of Tigger on the wall unless you have the rights to use that thing of Tigger on the wall. Does that make sense? So there are a lot of rights issues and things like that come into play for a director, and you really want if you end up being that one person who has to do everything, then you need to either know what the law is, or you need to engage an attorney to take care of that for you.
Yeah, and I think just to elaborate one more time on that, the director isn't going to have the lawyer on the set, so the director has to spot where the legal issues are, as does a producer. Where do I need to call to get help? I gave the example of music, for a production. A director, the song "Happy Birthday" is copyrighted, so you have that in a piece. Whoever the copyright owner is may say you didn't clear the rights. So a director has to be sensitive to those kinds of issues, to just ask the questions, and then the lawyer gets in and, does whatever damage they can.
Hi, for those of us that are filmmakers, what advice do you have for us in terms of protecting our work so that other people aren't allowed to come in and take credit? And my second question is, what advice do you have for those of us who are wanting to start our own production company? And my last question is, what advice do you have for us as producers who are contemplating working within the studio system and having a say and having a voice, whereas typically in your normal studio setting, it's very different and there's a lot of money at stake, and so you typically don't have a voice, if that makes sense.
What was the first? What was the first question?
My first question was, what advice do you have for us as filmmakers who have ideas or films or scripts or what have you they're wanting to make or produce?
Okay, in regard to the scripts, submit your script to the WGA, pay the fee. I think you have coverage for whatever, is it 10 years or something like that?
I think it's 5 years.
Oh, it's 5 years?
For $40.
Oh, 5 years for $40. And for $40 more, I'll give you 10 years. And also, I'm deferring to Sean since he teaches script and screenwriting and is also a screenwriter. Do you also submit to the Copyright Office? How is that?
Yeah, you can. Typically, register at the WGA is the cheapest way. Copyright, once you write it, it's automatically copywritten as long as you can prove when you wrote it. But until it goes into production, once you start sending it out, that's when you want to get it to the Copyright Office. Before that, registering it is probably covering you enough.
Do you have to be a WGA member to register it?
No.
Okay. Because you can't, in the U.S., maybe 20, 30 years ago, we joined the Berne Convention, which you get copyright once you put it in tangible form, but there's always an issue if you don't register it either with the WGA or with the U.S. Copyright Office. The Copyright Office, it's a one-page form. I think it costs $50. You send it in to them, and then you have a record that it is registered. You also get enhanced damages if somebody steals from it. There's always the issue of, did they copy it or did they come up with it on their own? Is it an element in the film that's copyrighted? You can have one party copyright the telephone book, another party can compile the same information and have their own telephone book. But registering it with the WGA or the Copyright Office is good. You asked what control do you have. If you're a scriptwriter, it depends on your bargaining position. You found a studio that's willing to make your film, and they say, thanks for the film, we're going to hire somebody to do the screenplay or to adapt it. You have the choice. You can say, great, I want approval rights. You can say, I want consultation rights, but the film studio has the ultimate approval. Or you may not get any rights. It depends on your bargaining power, how much they want the script, what your credentials are. If you're starting out, unfortunately, you don't carry a lot of weight. But getting the film made and getting the credentials is, probably the most important thing. Then as you get more experience and more credits under your belt, you have more bargaining power. Was there a...
Yeah, just to add on to that, I had two thoughts. One, I know that creative copyright has come a long way. I mean, I'm certainly not an attorney, but as I understand it, there have been several even choreographers and directors on Broadway who have been able to copyright their direction. So that's something that's it's fairly new in terms of entertainment law. And also, I had a friend once who, he wrote a script and all of a sudden was concerned that it ended up being fine, but he was concerned about who owned the script, whether it was him or whether it was the producer who paid him to write the script. And so, in kind of a mad dash just to protect himself, he sent me the script in a certified mail envelope to my house. And I was not to open it. So that if there was an issue down the line about who owned the script and when it was produced and when it was written, what have you, in court I could present this certified envelope and say, hey, this was given to me, and then in theory open it up and there's the script. The WGA is clearly the easier way to copyright work, but that was something that, happened to me.
Yeah, at the Family Channel, we also had a form. We use the same thing at CBN. When somebody submits an idea to us or a script, we had a form. If we knew it was something, we wouldn't even open the package because it could be something close to what we were working on. And then we sent a release form back that said, you understand we're not bound to make this film. We may be working on something similar, because that could happen too. And the studio could be in a difficult position where somebody comes up with an idea, but somebody else is working on the same thing. And then we had the people that opened that separate from the people that were actually in the creative area.
What was your third question?
What advice do you have for those of us who are contemplating starting our own production company?
Take my card and hire me, first of all, as an actor. That's the only advice I have. It's good advice.
Before you answer that, I just want to let you know it is 5 after 1 if anybody needs to go to their classes. We do have this room until 1:30 if anybody wants to stay a little bit later. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know that you all have things to do as well. So if you want to stay and listen to the answer to that question, please feel free. But if you do have to go, please feel free to go. Did you forget the question?
No.
Okay.
I'm not. I mean, starting a production company. Everyone in Los Angeles has a production company, whether it's incorporated or not. I guess Lou. What sort of? If you were going to LegalZoom to get, what would you do? You're just starting. What form would you get?
Well, I would have a project first. It's easy to incorporate a company. If this is the comm school over here and these are the law students, wait till they graduate, see one of them, you could be their first client. But, there's corporations, there's limited liability companies. Each one has advantages and disadvantages. Within the corporate world, there's what's called an S Corp, which is almost like a limited liability company. There's a lot of considerations, and it really depends on, what your plans are and how big your project is, and is it really going to come to fruition. I think the most important thing is if you do have scripts and things to protect your rights, like we indicated, and then, to create a company in Virginia takes, a few days and a few $100s, plus if you hire a lawyer, whatever the lawyer charges. It's easy to do and it gives you a lot of flexibility, but, then you have to pay franchise taxes and different things. So, get your project and, then start thinking about what kind of structure. And, LegalZoom, they don't provide the legal advice as to what's best for you. They just basically give you the forms. So, it's worth paying, if you have the money, $500 or whatever to see a lawyer and talk it through.
Just a little bit of a funny story. When you have a corporation, I'm president of my corporation. I'm incorporated, and I'm president, secretary, treasurer, everywhere. I now have to
So
pay...
am I, as an actor.
Yeah. I have to pay $120. Have you got the new $125 a year to have a corporate meeting with myself? Just telling you, there's fees everywhere.
Something Lou said earlier, I just wanted to sort of repeat a quick story that's law-oriented. A friend of mine was a law intern at New Line Cinema when I was there. And he just did whatever the business affairs needed. And eventually, he became the business affairs person there. And he basically was in charge of dealing with all kinds of different tax codes when they were making the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And something he said to me was, I didn't know, how to do that, but the New Zealand helped me, and I went with what with a certain amount of knowledge, and you just learn as you go, and by the end, now I can do it, anywhere. And so something that Lou had said, that it's like you learn while you're doing things, because some things are new. There are new codes, there are new, and so just because you don't know everything, a lot of times there's so much just on-the-job training that and everyone is learning as they move forward, and you just want to hire people who know the specific things, as Lou was saying. Don't just get the form. Just, if you can, pay someone who at least knows how to advise you.
I also had a thought too for you. I had a friend, he wrote a treatment, and I helped him a little bit. And Sean, I'm sure, can echo this. And if you're not in one of his classes, you should be. But he is shopping the treatment right now in Hollywood with the hopes of just a development deal. He wants a production company to pick it up and develop it, and maybe he'll get a created by credit. But he doesn't want to He said, yeah, it'd be fun to get on the set and produce, but that's not really my interest. I just want to sell this as a development deal. It just made me think of that. So there are obviously various different contracts, and I'm sure maybe you talk about it, maybe in your class. Anyway.